So, a few months ago, when we received the reveal of Ciel for Bermuda Triangle, I mentioned in a video that this card could break them. Essentially, I explained that Bermuda Triangle, the support so far looked insane, but that they had a few issues, and that Ciel essentially fixed those issues. And so at the time, quite some people agreed, but also quite some people disagreed, and I got like a little backlash for it here and there. So then I made a video highlighting, adding some nuance as to what their potential weaknesses may be. Because of course, no clan has like no flaws whatsoever. And even then, they had some flaws, but they still ended up being incredibly broken. So this time, let's discuss Nova Grapplers, both their strengths and weaknesses. Now do note that this is solely based on the 4 cards that we've seen yesterday and that seemingly made the world melt. So obviously, they are getting even more cards in this set that may either be super bad, so Novas don't look as good compared to the rest of the set that we'll be receiving soon, or they are even better and, supporting this whole playstyle even more. And then, well, I don't even want to think about that. So we are gonna judge this clan on both the cards they're gonna receive, these 4 that we know, but also the cards they already have. And this is something so crucial that people are forgetting. These 4 cards are not a new deck yet. You can ram these into the existing deck that is already incredibly strong. I would argue it's the only clan that could compete with Bermuda in the Heroic Evolution meta. Azure Dragon, cutting that doesn't hurt that much. Obviously it's a good card, like no one's gonna say it's a bad card. But when you see the new VR and you see what other high quality cards Nova already has, is it such a painful thing to cut? I don't think so. Like, you still have Kick Typhoon, you still have Illuminal, you still have your Brutal Jack and your Shout. I know some people don't like Shout, but we'll get to that later. So you literally ram this new stuff in the current deck. Cut Azure Dragon, run the God Hand, cut some of the Grade 2s, put in the new Grade 2. And remember, God Hand is literally, you discard 1 card for an extra drive. That is literally a stride at that point. And it basically, together with the restanding Grade 2, is an Alexandros. Because the restanding Grade 2 will swing for a small number, just like your typical Alexandros turn back in GBT 13. And then your boy will swing, you will hit the front that you stacked with the Grade 1. Everything will stand, everything will get hella powered. It's like a second or third stride Alexandros that relied on a little more setup. The issue is, none of the clans in Standard, okay, not none, but like most of the clans in Standard, do not have the hand that relevant GB13 meta decks had at the time. So while an Alexandros back then was super strong, it didn't break the game because most clans had the hand to deal with it. And more importantly, Alexandros, you only saw after a while. It was your first stride, but then it didn't really give all that power boost. We are talking about a second or third stride Alexandros. The game has been going on for a while. Both players are sitting at like a 10 or 12 card hand. This thing works when you ride it. You just ride, if you have the pieces, unga bunga. That's it. Let's talk about the strengths and then the weaknesses. So first of all, this thing is not restricted by your opponent being on Grade 3. So things like Mordred and Gancelot are strong, but their full effect only kicks in when the opponent is at Grade 3. So you can't just dice roll, I won, GG bro. That doesn't happen with those decks. I mean, obviously, if they win the die roll, they can still be in a favorable position because some decks require going first to be at like full strength really quickly. But overall, they are being balanced by that Grade 3 restriction. This one doesn't. If your opponent is sitting at Grade 2 and you opened a nut, you just win. And there was nothing your opponent could do about that. So you go first and you opened well, okay, go to the next game. So another strength this deck has is that it can reach Bermuda Triangle numbers, but with like double the attacks. Because of all these restanders like Kick. Okay, first you have like the tiny swing from, I don't know what its name is, X2 something. But he will swing for small. Still, you rip a card out of your opponent's hand. But then all these swings after your Vanguard's attack, because you stack the front, is just going to be massive. Also remember, 3 drive checks, so that kind of increases the odds, especially if they get a third front trigger. But then the question is, do you really want to be cutting draws? Probably not really. Maybe you got some heals. Damn. Okay, obviously, things have to be tested, but you can reach massive numbers, BT level numbers, but with way more attacks. The thing is, BT also plussed a lot on top of that, and this clan doesn't. But we'll get to those weaknesses later. Now, another positive thing about this deck is that it is super helmet. So Beast DT had a few attack patterns already, which made it slightly less helmet than some of the other decks in Standard. However, fronts are just super easy to use. You never have to consider, do this 2-2 pass with this and maybe I can, blah. Like, no, a front is just gonna go on everything, and that part of the thought process is gone. Your attack patterns are completely predetermined as well, because your new grade 2 literally just tells you what your attack pattern is. This guy first, then the Vanguard. That's your attack pattern. Wow, I hope you learned a lot. So it's very easy. And now some people may say, oh, that's a bad thing. And sure, to a certain extent, it's bad in the sense that, oh, the mirror match is going to be extremely dice roll. But it's also a good thing because it means you won't wear out over the course of a long tournament day. So maybe in round 8, someone who's piloting a hard deck, maybe like a Luard in Premium, they may start making some misplays because it's been a very taxing day with loads of micro decisions. If you're playing this kind of Unga Bunga fronts deck, you just don't have to make decisions. You don't have to put any thought into your deck, and so you're much less likely to make misplays because the misplays just barely exist. There is no probability, there is no, oh, maybe this or that. No, it's just go ham, hit some fronts, Unga Bunga. That's this deck. Of course, like once you change it into hard on front instead of the little Beast DT intricacies that at least existed to a certain extent. Now that's the strengths. Now we are going to get into the weaknesses, which is pretty important as well. And that is that it is piece reliant. Obviously, if you open a bunch of triggers, this deck does absolutely nothing. However, one could argue that almost every Standard deck is piece reliant apart from Grand Blue. If any deck in Standard opens a bunch of triggers, it just dies. And same in Premium, like if you just open triggers, you die. And if all your pieces are high quality, it actually doesn't matter how you open, because they will all help to a certain extent. Now, one thing people are really forgetting when it comes to this weakness being the piece reliance, and it's still a thing, however, it's that shout exists. So one can argue that the dancer, screaming announcer, whatever the hell, it's shout, we all know shout, could help the opponent. And it can. You could sometimes just rest it and your opponent gets to draw a card and you didn't. However, on average, it will draw you and your opponent the same amount of cards. And that is very important, because if you and your opponent draw the same amount of cards, but your cards are way more lethal, that is good for you. Imagine if you're playing Nova Grappler, and you're playing against someone with a trial deck. If a judge asked you, would both players like to draw 5 cards? Would you agree? Of course, because you know this trial deck kid stands no chance. This guy could draw 20 cards and would probably still not win. Okay, maybe that's a little bit too much guard, but you know what I mean. You know that the card quality you're about to get from a draw 5 is way higher than what they're about to get. And you know that your draw 5 will make it so your turn is lethal and they die, whereas their draw 5, you won't even care. So the value about shout in Nova Grappler right now even is just that the amount of offensive push you get of a draw 1 or 2 is way better than the defensive push a deck gets from a draw 1 or 2 versus Nova Grappler. This is what makes shout so good in Nova Grappler right now. So yes, it is piece reliant, but I would dare to say that adding shout kind of makes that less relevant, because you will get some random draws of it and you will gain way more power of those draws than your opponent gets defensively. Now, another weakness this deck has is no plussing. Novas have no huge advantage engine like really some clans have. Like, that's the thing with Standard. Not many clans actually really plus. So this argument is a bit weak, but I still see it and it's still valid to a certain extent. There are certain clans that just draw way more. If Shadow Paladin opens with a Nimane, that means they can Swordbreaker and draw some cards of that. However, they did have to like place the Nimane, so only the Swordbreakers after that will really have value. Remember that these are pieces that do absolutely nothing beyond their placement. So really, advantage is like a thing we have to, I would say, rediscuss in Vanguard, but the point still stands. They indeed do not draw endless cards, and so they have to hard draw into their stuff. However, they do have Axel 2, which is very useful. It's a free draw every turn from turn 3 if they get to rewrite, though I don't think turns will go much beyond turn 4, given the new power levels that we're seeing here. So Axel 2 does help them, and obviously losing 5k is not a huge loss. They aren't like OTT or Grand Blue where they just built the most massive hands. So this could lead to another potential weakness, being board wipes. If your opponent is playing Narukami or Murakumo, and they somehow lived through your massive ridiculousness and you pooped your entire hand onto field and they then wipe it, you're probably going to be in a pretty bad situation. The thing is, you can not overextend, but the question is, do you have to overextend with this deck to really get the full value? Maybe. And the other question will be, what if your opponent is just dead before they can board wipe? We haven't seen the full extent of what can happen here. Board wipes clearly don't matter if your opponent is at 6 damage, and so we'll have to see if that is actually the case. Question will really be, do opponents die that fast? But if they do not, obviously this deck will hurt when being board wiped. Now, I've also seen the argument that people went mad over Bustard when it was revealed, and that didn't end up doing super hot in the meta. So therefore, this support will also be fine. Here is the issue with that line of thinking. Bustard is an absolutely busted stride. The issue is that Nova Grappler couldn't play a grade 2 game at all. And so, at the time of release of Premium Collection, the grade 2 game was extremely important. Nova Grappler couldn't play it, and therefore it didn't do too well. If you just let people use Bustard without playing a grade 2 game, you would absolutely die. So it's not that Bustard was a bad stride, it's that Nova Grappler had bad support to play the grade 2 game. So it's not that Bustard as a card was fine, it's that it was in the wrong clan, so to speak. Bustard in a vacuum is still busted. It just didn't get the support yet to really make it shine. Now that is also what's keeping it balanced, and so we'll have to see if that's the same for these clans we've seen so far, like God Hand. Now, no matter what one may say, the power level of Infinity is on a higher level than we've seen before. And maybe that's because it's a new anime arc, so maybe they are just like going into phase 2 or phase 3 or whatever you want to say, and so from now on everything will get hella pushed. But still, it's on a whole new level. Heck, the power level of Phantasmal is on a whole new level compared to sets before that, and other sets before that, and so forth. So the question will be, how much higher is this power level really, and how sustainable is that? And again, further testing and results and so forth, and the extra cards will really have to show us that. Because again, remember, this is 4 cards, 2 of which were mere commons. We still have triple rares and double rares to receive. More importantly though, do let me know your thoughts now that we've shaped some more nuance, some more context into this debate. I really want to see that in the comments down below. Subscribe to this channel and I will see you soon. Ciao.